Good morning or good afternoon, whenever you're watching this. This is the lesson for April 2nd for science, 7th and 8th grade science. And we're continuing on looking at amphibians and reptiles. And what's the next thing we did? We did fish, reptiles, amphibians, we've not gotten to yet, and finishing out with dinosaurs for chapter 8. Yesterday we started going over snakes. We started last thing we talked about was their venom and just a little bit what two types of venom they have, which was a neurotoxin, which affected the nervous system, a hemotoxin, which affects the blood. And today we're just in general going to talk about snake bites and poisonous snake bites, maybe a little bit of safety precautions and things like that as far as snake bites and things with that. So, of all the snakes in the world, only about 20% are actually venomous. But they are, venomous snakes do tend to be the ones that bite, so they're responsible for half of all the reported snake bites. So every year in the United States, there's approximately 7,000 to 8,000 bites from venomous snakes. So you've got, out of those 7,000 to 8,000 snake bites that are reported, 5 or 6 people die. So you dying from a snake bite, especially in the U.S., is really, really unlucky, so to speak. All snake bites should require, though, some medical attention. Not even, whether it's venomous or non-venomous. If you get bitten by a snake, reptiles carry salmonella, so you should immediately wash, soap and water, bandage, stop bleeding, whatever. If you're not sure what the snake is, it's not a bad idea to maybe go and have a doctor check it out or go to some type of urgent care or something like that. If you're pretty sure of your snakes and you think it's venomous, then yeah, that does require some medical attention. But so if a venomous snake bites a person, the most important thing to remember is to remain calm. I had a good friend who is a paramedic, and he almost had someone die from what he thought was a snake bite. And come to find out, he was never bitten. This person that he thought was dying from the snake bite, they were getting him to the emergency room, and he was actually in cardiac arrest. And when the doctor interviewed him further, the reason why he was in cardiac arrest is because he saw a snake from his tractor. And it scared him so much that he started probably a panic attack, and then it just led further. So the most important thing to remember about being around a snake is to stay calm, stay quiet. And even if you're bitten by a snake, stay calm, stay quiet. Even if you know it's poisonous, stay calm, stay quiet. If you know it's venomous, then you try to limit your movement, because activity increases your heart rate, and it's going to increase the amount of venom that can get through your body. If you know that it's bitten, let's say, in your hand or in your foot, then you're going to immobilize that and make sure, luckily, that you keep that portion, especially if it's on your hand or your ankle, you keep it below the person's heart until they receive some type of medical attention. If you know it's a venomous snake, of course, your book says to call an ambulance. We live in an extremely rural area. You could probably get to the hospital as fast as the ambulance could get to you. So if you're really, really concerned, you should probably throw them in the car and try to take them to the nearest emergency room. Try to remember the snake's appearance and color. Hopefully, I think a good thing that you could do is just take a real quick pic of the snake on your phone if you've got it with you, and then the doctor can identify it, or if the doctor can't, the doctor can find someone to identify it quickly for him. If you don't have your phone, try to remember what the snake's appearance and what their color is. And as we get into a little bit about the different types of snakes, especially in the United States, this rule does not carry true through the rest of the world, but our venomous snakes in the United States, the majority of them you come in contact with are vipers, and they have a real different, mean look to them, in my opinion. That's not true for all venomous snakes, but the ones that you commonly get bitten by. They just have a kind of odder look to them. So do not try to catch the snake. Do not try to handle the snake. The doctor needs to know the type of snake, though, so they can check and get the right antivenom to you. Do not, so reflex bites from a dead snake can take place up to an hour after the snake's actually killed, after the death of a snake, just because they have so much nerve energy going through their body. So it is possible to be bitten by a venomous snake after you killed the venomous snake. So just be careful. So if we look at venomous snakes, there's two families that venomous snakes come from. They come from elapids, and elapids have these immovable, sorry, I'm getting a message, like something's trying to get past my firewall, and I'm not going to fool with that later. So elapids have immovable fangs at the front of their upper jaw, but many have fangs that are really too small to break the skin or even penetrate clothing. And half of all the elapids that are like that, I call the elapids the cute poisonous snakes. They look like a snake that you could just pick up and hug, and like a corn snake or something like that. And they're poisonous. But most of the elapids have fangs that are too small to break skin or even penetrate clothing, and half of them are in Australia. So half of all the elapids are found in Australia, and you probably don't really have to worry about them. Best known elapids, and if you look at them, they are kind of got cute little eyes to them, is cobras. Of course, we don't, and cobras you imagine from Ricky Tikki Tavi and all that. You got the big hood that comes out, and that's basically the cobra telling you, hey, I am poisonous and I'm going to get away from me. So the 18-foot king cobra is the longest venomous snake, and then you actually have a spitting cobra in Africa that will squirt venom from its fangs. The venom's painful. It can cause temporary blindness. Obviously, the snakes are not out there to kill humans. They're doing that for their prey in order to do that. So another African elapid that is somewhat aggressive, and these are larger snakes, but they look, if you look at them in the eyes, they don't look like a poisonous snake. They look like a cute snake, is like a mamba. There's black mambas, green mambas, and nothing about them screams poisonous, and they're pretty aggressive. But that's in Africa, that's Asia, those are Australia. So the Asian elapids are called krites. They have huge venom glands that can be 1/3 to the length of their body. Then we have another group of krites that are sea krites. And they have tails that flatten into a paddle that help them swim. Sea krites will often go, if you think, okay, I'm just not going to the sea, I'm not going to get bit by a sea krite. But they'll often come up onto land and sunbathe, or they'll come up to drink some fresh water. The sea snakes are just another group of marine elapids that are found in Asia and in the Pacific Ocean. But unlike the aquatic krites, sea snakes will spend their entire life in the water. They rarely come up onto land. Then if we go to North and South America, what's the type of elapids that we have to worry about? What's the type of elapids that we kind of need to, is there and like I said, the elapid is a potential venomous snake that doesn't scream venomous to you. So in North and South America, we have coral snakes. So North America coral snakes are brightly colored snakes, and God almost put this coloring on them to say, hey, might want to leave me alone because I got this bright color on me. So they're brightly colored red, yellow, and black. The scarlet king snake has a similar color pattern to a coral snake, but it's not venomous. So the scarlet king snake has red stripes with borders of black. The coral snake has red stripes with borders of yellow. So you might have learned this in 3rd, 4th grade. I'm not sure when they taught you this, but red on yellow, kill a fellow. Red on black, venom lack. That's just to be able to distinguish between those two. The majority of humans, though, it doesn't matter what kind of snake it is, we're probably going to stay away from it, so regardless. Now we get into the snakes that are venomous, and when you look at them, They just look mean. If you're on I started on page 305. Forgot to tell you that. I'm now turning to page 306, and you have a picture of a viper there. And if you just look at the viper's eyes, or if you look at some, compare kind of what the viper looks like to like what the corn snakes and the king cobra looks like. Their eyes have this really mean, weird diagonal pupil, where the cobra and like the little corn snakes and things like that don't have that. The vipers have this kind of weird shaped head compared to the other ones that they look at. So that's why lots of times when you see a viper, it just screams mean, stay away from me. Not that you're going to get that close. So in the viper family, it's divided into two groups. There's old world vipers, which we know when we say old world viper, that's basically the eastern hemisphere. You live in the western hemisphere. And then there's pit vipers. So the fangs of the viper are long, hollow. They're like a hypodermic needle. When not in use, those fangs will actually fold back along the roof of their mouth. And typical vipers are what you can have what the Apostle Paul got actually bitten by in Malta. That's documented in the Bible. He was bitten by an asp, and then there's adders, and then what we have here in the United States is the rattlesnake. Those are vipers. So pit vipers, like the rattlesnake, have a special depression or a pit organ on the front of their head between their eyes and their nostrils. This pit has a membrane that can detect minute temperature changes. That basically allows the snake to stay warm because they're a cold-blooded creature. Other pit vipers that we have here in the United States, we have copperheads. We know in Tennessee those tend to be the most aggressive ones compared to what the rattlesnakes are. And then we also have water moccasins. That's a water snake, a cottonmouth, what some people call them. That we do have in Tennessee, but not really in this plateau area that we're in. It's more toward the western area of Tennessee, just a little farther west and south of us. And then bushmasters. Not really sure what those are. So if you look at your snakes, remember what I said yesterday. Rattlesnakes need an antitoxin. Or anti-venom. So if you go to the emergency room, you can identify it as that, then sometimes they monitor you, sometimes they'll actually give you an anti-venom. A copperhead, guys, it's poisonous, but not quite as deadly. Like I said yesterday, most of the time if you have a copperhead bite, if you're not really, really old or really, really young, they normally just give you parameters to look for swelling, and then they might have you come back to look at it. But regardless, do not be so fearful of snakes. Most of the time the snake is going to leave you alone and it's trying its best to get away from you. That's why the rattlesnake rattles, the cobra unleashes its hood. There's all these different things that snakes do just to try to attempt to get away from you. There's another type of snake we're going to go into today, and that are constrictors. So constrictors are slow-moving snakes that constrict their prey or squeeze their prey until it dies. Each time the prey exhales, just kicked my cart if you're wondering what's going on. Each time the prey exhales, the constrictor will squeeze tighter until the prey can no longer breathe. So if you can think about it, you're like, and then when it breathes, that's when it squeezes tighter and tighter to where it can't breathe. The snake will remain coiled until it knows that the prey is suffocated, and then once the prey is suffocated, the snake is going to find its prey's head and start swallowing from there and going down. Large constrictors can eat pigs or deer. After consuming a large meal, though, the snake's probably good for several weeks. Common constrictor snakes are the boa and the python. Boas are generally found in the New World. Most boas live in Central and South America. Some live farther north. Long rubber boas live as far north as southwestern Canada. The best known boa is the 6 to 13 foot boa constrictor. And the largest snake in the world is another type of boa that lives in South America, known as the giant anaconda. The giant anaconda can grow up to 33 feet long. Now, pythons are usually 10 to 13 feet long, and all of those, except one species, lives in the eastern hemisphere, or what we sometimes call the old world. So boas develop their eggs inside their bodies and give birth to live young. All pythons are egg-laying and are one of the few snakes that will actually brood their eggs. They actually try to keep them warm until they hatch. Then the mother will only leave to maybe regulate her body temperature by getting in the sun or to drink. But as soon as those eggs hatch, after, because it's kind of odd for a snake to brood and to take care of its nest, as soon as they hatch, she's done. She just leaves. And that's, lots of reptilian mamas are kind of like that. So one thing I wanted to mention here is, while we don't have a lot of boas or constrictors or pythons that are natural to our habitat, if you've read anything about Florida, they're having an explosive problem with pythons and boas that have been released into the wild. And because of their climate, they are able to survive. And you actually have people in South Florida, especially, that are being paid bounties to go out and to get these constrictors and to get these boas and to bring them in by killing them. And if you think, oh, the poor snakes, no, they're not natural to that environment. And one thing that we have learned is that God knew best. And we do not need to try to introduce species into places where God didn't want them to be. And that's definitely one. And because, the boas and the constrictors in Florida are really aggravating to them, to lots of species, including the human species. Now, moving on to your next group of snakes are colubrids. And they are the largest group of snakes. There's over 1,600 species of these type of snakes. And because this group is so large, sometimes they'll try to break it down into different little divisions. Sometimes they try to call them reed snakes. Sometimes they'll call them water snakes. They might name them slug, snail-eating snakes. We might name them house snakes, corn snakes, black snakes, all those. Most of those are venomous or non-venomous and harmless, but there are a few colubrids in Africa that are venomous. Examples of colubrids are the North American king snakes, whip snakes, little racers, the milk snakes. The majority lay eggs into a clutch of 1 to up to 40. And then we've got the world's smallest snakes, which I think are really cute. If you look at the picture on page 306, it looks like an earthworm with great big eyes, just sad puppy dog eyes. I'm going to have to turn off my firewall because that's driving me crazy. So the world's smallest snakes, which burrow into the ground pushing dirt, and they have a hardened skull, since that's what they do all day, are called blind snakes. Sometimes they're called worm snakes. Sometimes they're called thread snakes because they have, really, smaller, they're small bodies. So blind snakes have no eyes, or they have very small eyes, or that's why I said to me, the picture you got in your book, it looks like an earthworm with eyes, because an earthworm doesn't have one. Usually they're brown, buff, or pink, and sometimes they have stripes or patterns. Most of the time, people confuse them with an earthworm, simply because they have a very similar size and a very similar color. Now, they have a brain bite of the European grass snake that will play possum, that attacks lying still with its tongue hanging out. You actually have a species like that here in Tennessee. It's called the hognose snake, that will do something similar to it. So most of your parents probably know that in this rural area, and it's just a fun snake to kind of watch it do stuff like that. So we're going to go on to turtles. We'll probably get through turtles. We'll probably stop with turtles, and we'll do amphibians the next day. So if we look at turtles, they're the only reptiles with a shell. The turtle's ribs, vertebra, and portions of their pelvic girdle are attached to the shell. If you've ever found a turtle skeleton or something like that in the woods, it's a really interesting thing to look at. My kids have found them before. I'm trying to get a weird reflection in my glasses. I'm gonna have to work on that. My kids have found those before, and it's really interesting looking to look at the vertebra and the stuff that's inside of a turtle shell. But a turtle shell are made of a lower plastron that covers the bottom of its body, and then or its abdomen, and then the upper part of their shell is called a carapace. So a plastron's on the bottom, and the top part is called a carapace. And then each shell piece has an inner layer of bone with an outer layer of a hardened keratin. And if you remember what keratin is, it's basically the same thing that makes your hair and your fingernails, but theirs is really, really, really hard. So it's really different. So the individual squares, or the little individual squares on a turtle shell, are called scutes. Turtles lay down new layers of keratin each year if the turtle has gone through a regular growth period every year. Sometimes, not us, but scientists, maybe other people can do this too. You can actually figure out how old the turtle is by counting the scutes rings. Because the turtle has slow, limited movement, that's why God gave it a shell. It can't run fast, so if a turtle is going to be attacked, the turtle basically carries his little armor with him. So they use their shell as protection. Some turtles will pull themselves completely into the shell, allowing that carapace and the plastron to go seal tightly because of the partial hinges that are in the plastron. Because the turtle's body is enclosed in an immovable shell, the turtle cannot expand and contract its chest cavity to breathe. So that's what's made the turtle just a little bit different. So the turtle uses its abdominal and its pec muscles, or its pectoral muscles, as a diaphragm. Leg movements also assist in breathing as the turtle walks. Turtles have good vision. Turtles have good color perception. They also have a good sense of smell. Most turtles, however, are mute, meaning they don't make a sound, and they really don't hear well. So turtles don't have teeth, but instead they have a hardened plates for gripping and tearing food. One of the most common turtles you can find around here is the eastern box turtle, which lots of hill people and Appalachian people call tarpons. I'm not real sure why. And they are really interesting looking even if you have a pet turtle, when they eat stuff. Especially like a softened fruit, like a tomato or something like that. It just looks like, since they don't have any teeth, they almost just have to wallow that food around and do all kinds of stuff. So that's just something to do if you've got a pet turtle, or if you want to leave a tomato out and see if a eastern box turtle comes up to it and chomps on it. So female turtles bury their eggs in the ground. In some species, the gender of the turtle's offspring depends on the temperature of the nest and during its incubation. So that's kind of wild. If it's a certain temperature, you might have all girls. If it's a certain temperature, you might have all boys. If the eggs are kept at a low temperature, only male turtles will develop. If the eggs are kept at a high temperature, only females will develop. Then we have marine turtles. Remember, marine means it's in the ocean. So marine turtles have paddle-like limbs. They rarely come on land, except for one thing, to lay eggs. The leatherback turtle is named because of its leathery skin on its shell, and it can grow up to be 6 feet. That would be a scary turtle. And weigh up to 1,000 pounds, making it the largest living turtle. The leatherback's ribs and vertebrae are not fused to the carapace as in other turtles. Leatherbacks can be found in most warm oceans around the world. Although most sea turtles are carnivorous, meaning they're meat eaters, there is a big green turtle that's big, meaning it can get up to 800 pounds, that lives completely on a diet of seaweed. It lives in warm coastal waters. Then we have common fresh turtles that are found throughout the Americas, and this is what we frequently have to deal with, and that is a snapping turtle. So if you've been to the lake, if you've been to your pond, if you've been to anywhere frequently, I know I've had some people say they stock their fish. This is what my husband's dealt with, and all the fish are gone. What happened to the fish? Most often it's a snapping turtle that's gotten the fish, because they are coniferous. The common snapper is found in muddy rivers or ponds. It can weigh up to 15 pounds, or 50 pounds actually. It eats not just fish, it eats birds. It can also eat insects. The alligator snapping turtle can get much larger. It can get up to 3 feet long, 200 pounds. It's mainly found south of us though, further south in the southeast, and it's not as aggressive as just the little common snapping turtles you find around here. The alligator snapping turtle will sit at the bottom of a lake with its mouth open. It actually has a little, it wiggles its little tongue to kind of mock an earthworm. And then when a fish comes over saying, that looks like a worm, it gets close enough, the alligator snapping turtle will chomp down on the fish and have a meal. Snapping turtles cannot draw their heads into their shells. Instead, they have to pull their heads close enough to their shell and then face their predator with their mouth open. And that might be one reason why lots of us consider the snapping turtle so aggressive, because that's the only method they've got to defend themselves. They can't draw up into a shell. The only thing they can do is go and kind of open their mouths at you. They do have a very severe bite, and few predators, most predators, including most humans, unless you're just being ridiculous, just stay away from them. So then we have one more turtle we're going to look at, and then we're done for the day. And that is a terrestrial turtle. And the terrestrial turtle, terrestrial of course just means that it's on the land. That's just what all terrestrial means. And the terrestrial turtle that we have is a tortoise. So tortoise is a term reserved for turtles that live only on the land, and they have an elephant-like feet. Tortoises can range in size from a 3-inch speckled Cape tortoise up to the Aldabra or the Galapagos tortoises. Male tortoises are larger and have longer tails than female tortoises. Tortoises are the longest living land animals, living 150 years or more, simply because they have a really slow metabolism. And if you go to our local zoo, which would be in Knoxville, I'm not sure, I can't remember if Nashville has it or not. They do have tortoises there, you can see. There has been a time period in our lives where they would let you ride tortoises at zoos. They no longer let you do that, but they do have a statue that you can get on, so you can kind of judge and feel what it would look like, what would it feel like to have a tortoise. So the big tortoises, and the one that they have in the at the zoo would probably be a Galapagos tortoise, which if you see right behind me, I have South America. Let me turn this way. So the Galapagos Islands are right in here. So if you look here, it's right off the coast of Ecuador, which is really, really close to the equator there. And that's where those tortoises can get really big. All right, so that's our lesson, our science lesson for Friday, April 3rd. Of course, I'm doing this a few days before, and it'll be posted a few days before. So if you ever feel like, hey, I don't want to do anything tomorrow, I want to go ahead and maybe listen or review stuff, then do that. Also remember that next week we're going to, we only have like reptiles and dinosaurs to cover, and then we're going to be done. And then we're going to have a test. And in your packet that's being picked up on April 1st, you had your test review. You're going to get your actual test on Monday, April 6th. So before we leave, let's just have a quick word of prayer, and then you will be good for the rest of the day until, I guess, we have Bible or any of your other tests or any other thing you need to do. So Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing this together through technology, and thank you for helping us to just learn a little bit about your creation and all the many things you do for us. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen. Have a good day, guys. I'll see you later.